I'm Mark Sheppard. I lecture at Kent University, and also I'm basically co-founder of the lab with Becky. So it's a slight kind of conflict of interest of the whole thing as well. And yeah, and I do a lot of stuff with I'm an educator, but also with deep fakes and also neuroscience. So that's my potted intro there.
Thank you, Mark. And Edmund, don't be shy about your announcement. This is good.
Hi everyone, I'm Edmund Terem Ugar and from the University of Johannesburg here in South Africa. And yesterday I was conferred with the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Philosophy here at the University of Johannesburg. So it's an exciting new day for me. And my work revolves around African relational moral theory, bioethics, medical ethics, and African philosophy and how they informed medical decisions, how they inform the development and designs of technologies used for medical diagnosis, and also how they also inform the relational context of clinical practice between patient and doctor and the healthcare environment. Thank you.
Okay, this session is more like a workshop kind of conversation. We've got a few slides for a focus, and what we'll do is share the slides. We've got some other links as well, which I'll put into chat, which might be helpful as well. So if I can share, let me just share my screen, and then I shall then try and find the slides, and we'll go from there. Bear with me for a second. So these are the slides. Let me see if we can make this actually play. Kind of Oh, I hate Google Slides. Why did I do it in Google Slides? Um, but we'll leave it there for a second. What I've got before I start on here, I'll put some stuff. I've got some papers if you want to check out these links as well. I put these in the chat. So bear with me for a second. Add this to the chat on here. There's a full range of things to check out, and I've got a Google Drive link that you can share the papers as well. If that's going to load up, I don't know. It's not sending. It might be just too long. I'll sort that in a second at the end of the talk as well. So we'll put that in there. So initially, we're looking at this sense of um, reality gap and implication of mental health around educational AI. And we're talking about more of a workshop type of thing, looking at expectations versus reality. So this also could be a bit of a social experiment in some ways because we're looking at some audience interaction here in terms of what people's thoughts are around their own learning styles, and how they use AI in a learning sense as well. Let me just try and run this talk. Any clues on running Google Slides talks in the browser? What do I hit on here? To arrange my
We have a
to
slideshow. If you want to have a full screen, you have a slideshow on the right side.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, I can't see it from my things
Yeah,
on here. Oh
a slideshow.
oh
Oh,
Mm,
sir.
yeah. Hi
Uh,
Divyam.
Hi, sir. You see that sideshow on the next to share.
next to share, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
next to
yeah,
share. Yeah, I
There
can't.
on the left. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There we
Yeah,
go.
I can't. Yeah, there we are. Because I couldn't see it on my thing on there. Actually, it's covered up with all the
Yeah,
bits and pieces. There we go. Cheers
perfect.
for that. So,
Anytime, sir.
thank you. It's ironic, isn't it? Is that, in terms of tech, I'm totally lost now. I know nothing about technology. Um, so I guess the first point of this is looking at academic cheating. And so, in a sense, I've got there's a few papers to check as well. I'll send you the links to these papers. And looking at in the concepts of AI assisted academic cheating and also limitations around AI. I suppose before that point, maybe we should talk about our own experiences in teaching and also with the current influx of students using AI as learning and LLMs as learning tools. Do you want to do you want to interject here, Edmund? Okay, just put some
Um,
of your thoughts.
yes, and I'm so happy for the theme of this or the theme of this gathering, which is about honesty. So recently, there's been a lot of use of generative AI, especially at our universities. So here, I'll speak from my own experience here in South Africa. There was a time where a student of mine used generative AI to generate an entire research for me. And I looked at the work and I said to the student, you have generated this entire research. Like the person did not even make an effort to at least to tweak it here and there. They just sent it to me. And this was a graduate student. And I said to the student that this is generated. And the student replied to me saying, everyone uses AI. What is your problem? And it got stuck in my head that I started rethinking the employment of this AI technologies and generative large language models within the academic processes, especially when it comes to um, generating text and not making students to actually engage in the content of what they're supposed to do. And some of the students that I have worked with, or at least that I've given workshop with, are finding it so difficult to explain their research. As a matter of fact, some students said to me that they cannot explain their research if they don't have their laptops open in front of them. So they need the content right in front of them for them to make some kind of explanation of what they're doing. And again, these are graduate students, which has now got me thinking, what is the impact of AI and what is AI and generative models doing to our students? What is the future of academia, or what's the future of the academic space? What's the future of teaching? What's the future of learning? If we cannot at least get the skills for um, if we cannot get the skills, some kind of analytic skills, which we think are very, very important for the future of academia and especially within this digital context. And as I will show, or as we will show in some of the slides going down, two of the slides going down, drawing from the Bloom's or from Bloom's taxonomy, and also drawing from cognitive science, we will show how relevant this analytic skills, evaluative skills are, especially in the teaching and learning process. I'll just leave it there and give it to you, Mark.
Okay. So it's a really interesting use case studies in terms of that. I mean, from my experience, I've had lots of students where, again, it's almost been dialed in the sense where work is just submitted without even checking about. Obviously, looking at coding, looking at report writing, and looking at and this is a problem as well when it comes to cognitive analysis and analyzing their own work. Students are often left wanting in terms of how to describe previously learned material. And I've had a number of students where, I mean, again, one case study was someone who submitted some work for a database exercise for looking at a database design, and just basically created an image which was a little man in the top corner, a boy in the bottom corner, both looking at each other. And the figure for that report was I used AI to simplify the process of creating a database design as I felt it was easier to explain it in this manner. And literally at that point, I was marking work at that time. I closed my MacBook and went for a walk. That was basically at that point. In a sense, there's also this disjoin where students seem to think that as long as they can cut and paste anything on a page, it will get marked, and they got marks for it. Basically, it's a strange place to be in education where cognitive cognitive intuition, cognitive learning, and cognitive processing seems to have fallen down by the wayside. So we've always got a bifurcation in the sense of students who totally use AI and LLMs to do all their work and learn nothing, and then other ones actually don't use LLMs and get reduced grades, get worse grades than the people who are using LLMs totally. So in this sense of learning, is a difficult situation to mitigate at the moment. I think also what we're seeing on the other side of the other side of the coin, we're looking at obviously leads on to academic cheating as well. That's one other thing where you're getting there are tools where you can write an entire thesis now. You can write an entire piece of work on an entire paper, but the output isn't going to be groundbreaking. Again, the discovery limitations in terms of how the AI creates creates the science, like in trying to create a scientific discovery from scratch is actually lacking. So there's almost there's a extreme plateauing of ideas and also output. So it becomes this generic output. So 2 to 3 years in now, we're looking at 3 to 4 years in. We're now looking at AI in teaching, in education. It's almost creating this norm of that it's acceptable to use AI to produce anything, a book, a thesis, an academic piece of work as well. And this is I think, a real dangerous spot we're in, which obviously when as a few more slides further down from this, in terms of the impact on education and institution level, and also a sense of what the students themselves will get out of this scenario. And again, these tools are creating a sense of ease of creating a project, and also scoring top marks, basically getting 90%, 100%. But then the students learn nothing and going out into the workplace and knowing nothing is by that point as well. So in terms of that mental health impact, so there's obviously this DIMH 2026 is more about let me just end with that person is more about honesty, but also integrity from both sides, from the student and the institute as well. So some of the students, I know it's particularly at Kent. Now we've got education, OpenAI educational chat GPT, is that the institutes themselves have got this kind of fear of missing out, FOMO, in terms of wanting to present AI as a usable tool without acknowledging the dangers of AI in terms of both academically and also in terms of mental health, where students, academics, and other far-reaching individuals elsewhere, etc., actually rely on it for their own mental health advocacy. In terms of, obviously, I know professors, etc., use these tools as a way of analyzing their own emotional states. So again, it's a long-reaching kind of applications where AI is deemed to be a tool which then can be used to do everything with. I think this is the danger we're in academia at the moment. I suppose we go to the next slide from here. And so this sense of large language model limitations in terms of, as we talked before, as you've seen before in earlier talks about sycophantic AI, also the sense of recursive forgetfulness, where the training on generated economics models more forgetful, the training becomes iteratively worse and worse and worse. And so obviously we've seen this in other processors during the educational year, as in terms of the academic year. And so when this sense of, I know at people at Kent we are looking at in terms of ways to explain the use of AI and some pitfalls of AI. It's only coming in now 3 years afterwards, after this kind of sudden tsunami of AI. And also self-referencing models, etc., can also be a problem, because basically each model, whether it's Claude, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Grok, etc., will also preference their own output in relation to other outputs. If you're actually doing a kind of LLM arena type scenario. So the limitations of the models are also causing complacency in students as well, thinking, well, it's a get out of jail free card in terms of getting their report out or their homework in on time or their assignments in on time. And any further thoughts on that, Edmund, in terms of?
Yeah. So especially when it comes to the limitations of LLMs, for the most part, if you look at the ecosystems, especially from the university perspective, not in South Africa, it's even getting to high school where high school students are now generating their work using ChatGPT. And these are just basic essay writings and so on and so forth. So high school students already have access such that they're not really granted or given at least some kind of literacy skills on how to navigate the terrain. So for them, they don't even understand that these models have some kind of limitations. And also let us look at first year students, students that are coming into varsity, first years, second years. Uh, One of the things that I picked up teaching the students is they think that the fancier the language, the better it is the sense making. So when an LLM uses fancy language, fancy grammar, to them that is very impressive. And because they don't have or they have not developed the the requisite critical thinking skills to engage with this tool from a very Socratic perspective, it follows that they just assimilate whatever it says, they copy it and then paste it. And to them, they've done some kind of impressive work. And now, as the authority within that space, you know that this phrase makes no sense. And even when you engage with the students in class, you know that these students don't even speak like this. And that then, yeah, and then that then generates the frustration that you get engaging with this because you know the limitations of this tool. And again, few slides down this, we're just going to show how the problematics that arises from this.
Yeah. And in terms of, I'll go back to the LM slide. There's also the sense of these digital artifacts as well in LMs, where the training model is, say, as one paper, which I can share the link for as well, looking at vegetative electron microscopy. So
Yes.
basically, in that sense, you have a sense where this imaginary phrase has been invented and embedded in the training material, now being quoted back and forth. And so in academia in general, I mean, it's almost like in the sense of it's always been known that people don't tend to read all the papers that they quote as well, papers, etc., when they're doing a publication. But I think with the use of LLMs, where we get again fake references being produced, where the students then don't check up the papers. Also, you also get a sense of where you're getting information which is technically false or just made up from concatenating two words. And I think that gets then carried into every other publication, so it becomes fact at that point. So because obviously garbage in, garbage out in terms of how we look at computer processors. In a sense, this is writ large with LLMs, because if you just scrape the internet, you can get every bad Reddit post, you're going to get every misinformation, every redacted paper, etc. And you mash it into a large data set, and then you're trying to make conclusions or create narratives out of those conclusions. So again, limitations in terms of scientific discovery, and that limitation on being able to do something novel with that information is going to be limited. And also the writing itself is very generic. It's very and that's why when you're marking papers, which I see a lot with undergraduates, master students, and also PhDs, is that you get a sense of writing skill is being lost. I think literacy is being lost in terms of being able to write coherently in a report or in a thesis. And I'm seeing that even more and more now. So it's quite scary in that respect. So again, when you're using a tool which is very limited and also plateaus out quite quickly, you're going to get any sense of any spark of creativity, and a real spark of creativity. Just what we're seeing at the moment. Another part of this as well, in that expectation, so students have expectation of mental health concerns, is that the two papers I've found here, looking at human dispowerment and also delusional spiraling as well, is that with the models, the sycophantic nature of the AI, again, promotes the sense of compartmentalization in terms of conversation with the AI, where everything that everything is entered the prompt is lauded as the next biggest thing, a big great idea, etc. But also this delusional spiraling in this particular paper here, looking at sycophantic chatbots causing this delusional state over time, is that people have been funneled into a paradigm, and that's also created this cognitive dissonance and creates a kind of a reduced mental health. In a sense, it creates this sense of isolation and lack of empowerment. And I think it's obviously not generalizing in terms of all students feel this in a sense, but in terms of you will get a sense of some students will also experience this over time, where they, on a deadline, might want to be working on a project, maybe a short-term project, and then end up getting really isolated, and then forced down this self-fulfilling paradigm. And I think that's really dangerous in the sense of looking at how this can be impacting on their education and their mental health in general. But the most generalized outcome of this is that critical thinking skills are reduced, and you're really kind of going against the whole sense of learning in general. And as I said, there's four things I always say to students in one sense is: one, just turn up. You never know what's going to happen. Two is look around when you're there to see if you're actually going to engage with that session. Three, critical thinking. And four, be kind. And when you're comparing those four statements with using an AI tool in this respect, then you're bypassing probably every educational paradigm in that sense. And so this sense of managing student expectations, but trying to, in the sense of these things are just tools to use, and they have limitations, and that's what we really are starting to expand upon in education per se. But I don't know whether it's actually kind of, whether it's trying to, it's like almost like spitting in the wind in some respects. Is that almost like the sense of wanting to get the best grades is outpowering the sense of doing the right thing and actually learning something. Do you want to add anything else, Edmund?
Yes. So from this very very perspective, I think one of my arguments is that the goal of education is supposed to make us better persons, or at least that should be the telos of education, such that when I am being educated, it's for me to have a meaningful life that is impactful to myself and to society. And one aspect of this meaningfulness would be kindness. But then kindness sort of disappears when there is no interrelation between the learner and other learners, or the student and other students and the lecturer, or other human persons that are surrounded by these persons, because it is engaging with other people that you then learn the value of kindness. You learn the value of what it means to be good to the other person, because you would see from different perspective what goodness, kindness means to different people. And also depending on another student, for you to get some kind of intellectual capacity, create some kind of human connection, which we think, or I think it's been lost in this AI ecosystem. And I think it then becomes very important for universities to then rethink the very goal of educating, the purpose of educating, and why education ought to be very, very important. And this is precisely, or this is the right time for such conversations to be had. And lastly, on this point, there are certain people that I have conversed with that have graduated, and they've graduated, and then when you engage them in conversation, oh, they say it in a very jovial way. Say things like, ChatGPT was my best friend. ChatGPT helped me gain this degree. If it wasn't for ChatGPT, I wouldn't have gotten this degree. And while that might sound very, very funny, and we might laugh about it, when you further engage with these students to tell you what that degree that they have obtained entails, and you realize that they just stay blank. And for them, what was of importance was succeeding. And success in that instance is just passing the modules, or passing the course, or getting an A, or just graduating. And then it then implies that the most fundamental the most fundamental aspect of educating was lost in that process. For and yeah.
Yeah. And really good points there, because I think that's the reason why I chose this graphic in terms of that expectation, hard work, straight line to outcomes. And you got, in reality of this, actually the up and down, the toing and froing of these problems, they're kind of trying to sort out the challenge and trying to learn, trying to understand the process. And when I think about student expectations, there was, particularly coding, say web design, for example, there's one student who was a mature student who was basically a software engineer. He came in to do a degree at Kent, and he created this JavaScript output, which was just like it was taken down. He said that it was taken down by Moses on the tablets from from the mountain. It was just like perfect. It was just like if code could shine, his would have shone like the sun, basically. I gave him 100% because like you couldn't argue with his flawless logic. It was brilliant. It was actually experience had developed to all that point where he could code to a sense where it was inspirational code. And if I compare that to, say, example, let me just a minute. Say for example, if I compare that with people who have coded with ChatGPT, again, it gets you. Sometimes it gets you there. Most times it won't, especially if the code assignment is abstract in any way, and you will get a generic output. I've never been wowed by an LLM or by an AI. I've never been wowed by a response. I've been wowed by people I've talked to in terms of their experiences, their ideas, and what they feel is to be human. I've been wowed off the scale with that, but never from an LLM. And I think from an educational standpoint, as educators, we're almost it's not quite endorsing, but actually almost endorsing a tool which is actually not fit for purpose, and it's not doing the students a service. It's not making them better. It's not giving them a moment to shine and be inspirational or do something inspirational and have their own light bulb moment. And I think this is the thing which, particularly for me, I'm seeing this a lot in teaching, where you're not really seeing a lot of wow, that's fantastic. You don't see it so much. I only see it less than 5% of entire year cohort, basically. So that's an interesting angle. So cognitive process. Do you want to expand on this, Edmund? Are you still there? We got
Yes.
yeah.
So one of the things that I think, one of the things that I think that AI has done, at least LLMs have done, is that they've helped us to expose um, academic practices, or they've helped us to expose the deficiency that comes from teaching and learning. And one of the deficiencies is that education, or at least the universities, but from primary, secondary, and universities, they've been practicing, or the activities at universities, secondary schools, and primary schools have been within this lower cognitive process. So in cognitive science and people who, and I believe that people who have expertise in cognitive science will say that this we have lower cognitive processes and higher cognitive processes, where lower cognitive processes are processes that involve repetition. So, and these are things that the brain is familiar with, um, such that when the brain has already learned something, the brain would want to the brain wouldn't want to relearn that anymore. Let's say, for instance, learning how to drive a car. When you've learned how to drive a car, it becomes something that is embedded in you such that you don't need to overthink it. You just need to get into your car, put it on the ignition, and you drive off. Or if you've learned how to ride a bicycle. So you don't need to put so much work. It's a thing of repetition. And because the brain enjoys repetition because it doesn't stress it that much, given the kind of cognitive labor that thinking does. Um, so the brain is happy maintaining that lower cognitive processes. And if we look at how universities or secondary schools and primary school or education in general has been functioning, is this repetitive task where a lecturer comes into the class or a teacher comes into a class, teaches students, and then during assessment time, students just regurgitate what they've been taught and through assessment. And as a result of that, it doesn't stimulate the critical thinking of students. And so, if there's not a necessity for us to then move towards higher cognitive tasks, and with lower cognitive tasks, that is what AI, LLMs are capable of doing. They're just capable of doing tasks that are very, very repetitive. And that is why we have automation of tasks. But with the higher cognitive process, it is a kind of process that involves analytic skills. It involves critical thinking. Involves evaluation. And this is what the brain does not enjoy doing because it is a very daunting task. It requires quite a lot of cognitive energy for you to analyze, for you to think. Let's say, for instance, when it comes to the review processes or publishing processes, part of the reasons why, or I'd like to think that part of the reasons why people are now using LLMs to do review is because they don't want to engage in this higher cognitive process, the process of thinking critically, because it is daunting for them. And now they can use LLMs to do that, which of course there is no integrity in doing that. So, with higher cognition requiring analytic skills and critical thinking skills, it then becomes important for universities to rethink how their courses, assessment, teaching, research ought to be designed so that, one, of course, we know that LLMs or AI, the AI ecosystem, the digital space is here to stay, and we know that uh, there are certain capitalist intentions behind this. So of course, market structures would want to keep them dominant. And so university now has a way or has to then rethink how it wants to at least work around the presence of these digital structures. And by doing so, it means that we have to rethink how we design assessment. For instance, assessment should not just be based on students waiting for the mid semester, write an essay, submit, wait for the end of semester, hand over an essay. There should be some kind of projects that would be very, very interactive. There should be projects that would allow students to create. And I think in the next slide, when we then look at the Bloom taxonomy, we would see, okay, thank you, Max. According to the Bloom taxonomy of learning objectives, so we have these very different objectives here, where we have things such as creation, where it has to involve the generation, planning, and developing of um, certain cognitive tasks, certain assessment, or certain thinking processes. students have to learn how to then argue, to validate their point, to make judgment. And this could also be, I think in Estonia, they've designed what they call the Socratic AI. And if we're familiar with the Socratic method of dialogue, especially in the argument with Euthyphro, we would see how that dialogue breeds critical thinking and breeds some kind of evaluation and judgment. And also analytic skills as well, where students are supposed to learn how to contrast, to scrutinize, and to examine. And I don't think this can happen when students are just handing over assessment or when students just come to class and they just sit there and listen to the lecturer deliver this lecture. I think lectures have to be designed in a very interactive way, in a very debating way where students will engage and students can engage with themselves. There should be presentations. People should have assessment that they go put it against an LLMs, generate this idea, now argue against this idea, and things such as that. They must learn how to apply their thinking, execute their thinking process, implement, translate complex theories into very, very simplified thinking. And also, they must learn how to understand. Understanding is also an important aspect. But I don't think that understanding makes sense when it is just within a human versus a digital artifact. It has to be relational in a sense that students must have working groups where they bounce ideas between each other. I think we should bring back all these working groups, learning groups. Yes, we know that some students will drag other students, but that is what makes us human. We have to face those kinds of challenges. So, because I am too good and I don't want to be dragged by other students that are struggling, uh, I don't think that that is such thinking is should it doesn't fit into the goal of educating, because the goal of educating, like we have already established, is to be kind. And if I am an excellent student, I should be able to work with students that are also facing challenges, cognitive challenges, and I must learn how to deal with them. That is part of learning, because that is how the society in which we are producing students to go into operates anyways. And also the task of remembering. I think remembering also, where students are supposed to. I see that in some institutions or in some contexts, when the instructor comes into the class, they don't make students to rethink what was said in the previous class. And I think sometimes students don't want to engage. And I think we have to make students engage. Yes, students have rights to decide what they want, but I mean, sometimes I think we ought to also rethink those rights, such that this is a learning environment. This is what they've paid for. They understand the scopes and what is required of them. And for some, they should engage. If they are in that class, it has to be participatory. And one ways of doing that is by engaging students and making them repeat or at least recall what was said in the previous class and what their thinking was after the class and things like that. I think that is supposed to help with remembering and trying to draw comparison with previous thinking and thinking that arises from present class and so on. I don't know,
Yeah.
Mark, if you want to add anything.
Oh, yeah. To that one, it's interesting in the sense of that of the collective kind of thought process, the collective helping as well. That again, it's all these soft skills which are kind of missed in teaching as well. I think in terms of this, what students can get out of any module, anything, any subject you can think of can get these soft skills. And what's interesting in that is that of course you can get modules like Internet of Things, you can get paper discussions, you can get seminars, we do things on cybersecurity, etc., all those kind of things. But what's kind of missing out of this is the fact that On the institutional side, I think because there seems to be, the students will just rely on AI, therefore I don't have to do any work. I think I've seen that a lot with certain lecturers and other instructors, where they can sit in front of a class and not engage with the students. But the whole point of this is to teach, and I think that's the thing about bringing your humanity to the classroom and engaging with everybody in that room, whether it's actually in a work, in a class situation. There might be a practical class where you have to engage with everybody in that room one by one throughout the entire session, also engage with them all. And I think this is part responsibility between the institution and part responsibility between the student as well. So it's almost like an unwritten contract in terms of how we will learn. And I think this is missing from the environment at the moment. I feel that with AI, and it's this kind of the mass marketing of AI, LLM, etc., is this FOMO, fear of missing out business. Is that in a sense, if you don't use them, we're missing out. But I find the best lessons come from me with a couple of pens on a whiteboard, or engaging with somebody trying to look at a paper, or engaging some kind of critical thinking. So yeah, the tools themselves, AI tools are great for what they do, but they have limits. And I think we as educators have to really emphasize the limits of those tools. I think that's my main 2 points with that. I guess, which leads on to this, we're actually getting close to time now, I guess we are, institutional expectation, duty of care. And again, I found these couple of slides in terms of core values and, looking at this sense of what we're supposed to come out with for, kind of coming full circle from what Edmund was talking about as well, in terms of what you expect as a student to learn. And we're looking at, you're learning about teamwork, trust, responsibility, your innovation, if you can really, get the one kind of moment where you get this a light bulb moment. But in a sense, we're looking at ethics and this whole sense of learning environment as well. The customers thing, and that obviously is this, it's a generic kind of schematic there, so ignore that a bit. But in a sense, your customers could be the rest of your people you're working with in that respect when we're out in the outside world. And on the left-hand side, we're looking at this learning pyramid in terms of what we do as educators in the session. We touched on all these things: and lecturing, reading, audio, visual, demonstration, group discussion, practice by doing as well, which is the main core of what we do as educators. And then, of course, then you can teach others, because I think what's also missing is that we're also looking at education as first past the post, in the sense, I got a first, you got a 2-1, you got a 2-2, etc. But nobody's helping each other. I think I always try and get students the more able students to try and say, well, what did you learn out of this? What can you share with the class in terms of how you would do how you solve this particular problem? And that is, I think, is a skill, or is kind of a concept, is almost alien, I think, as well. But what's important is that all the things you see in the learning pyramid on the left-hand side, with that passive learning, active learning, are missing when you throw LLMs in the loop, because LLMs will just basically get you nowhere. They get you an answer, but what you're actually learning at the end of it. So ultimately, when you start your 3 years of an undergraduate degree, that's what I always say to students at the beginning in some first year sessions. It's like, you can use LLMs, but do you want to end up in 3 years' time knowing less than you knew when you came in, and 30 grand poorer? It's your choice. We can use them as a tool, but what do you want to learn out of this? I think this is what's missing in the marketing strategy of putting LMs out there. The investment of institutes to say we don't want to miss out. Therefore, we must invest in this educational AI, and then the students' expectation saying, yes, we need to use these tools, because otherwise we're missing out, and then education is left in the road. And any thoughts, Edmund, on that one?
Yes, I think just for me to conclude from my side, I think it is Shannon value in her work that helps us to understand how AI is skilling our capacity for what she conceives as the art of personhood. And it is it is skilling our capacity for interaction. It is skilling our capacity for interpersonal relationships. And for me, especially coming from a sub-Saharan African perspective, and my work revolving around a sub-Saharan African philosophical perspective, I've tried to see how to design my teaching to be relational in a sense that because it sits at the very, very center of what is this moral theory, this African perspective, this African moral theory, where a person is a person in relations to other people. I am because you are, and since you are, I am. And such that knowledge is a collective endeavor, it is a collective effort. And it is a collective effort because when an idea is being created, it is bounced off with other people, and some kind of evaluation arises from the interaction that a person who has this innovative idea has. So if I have an innovative idea, I need to bounce it off other people and see how to then come up with novelty. And the moment we lose sight of that, we lose sight of these interactive processes that are involved in learning. And the moment we lose sight of this collective nature of knowledge production, I feel like, and this by engaging or by making the AI technology as the other instead of the human being being the other, I think we'll lose the essence of what it means to produce knowledge. And if we lose the essence of what it means to produce knowledge, then we would lose the essence of what an educational institution ought to promote. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a great place to stop. Any questions?
And
Is everybody bamboozled?
we can probably take one question, and I want to leave enough time for Kate if you give me a thumbs up if you're happy to do another freestyle poem. So yeah, and there's comments in the chat as well, and a poem that Jay has shared. Thank you very much. And yeah, if anyone has a question, I certainly do, but I don't want to take it, but I will patiently wait. And then pounce. Okay. So PhD by publication. I think this is a great concept in theory and in action. I've seen it do wonders. But what happens if you're now just using AI to produce all your papers and you're not getting everything that you both talked about, that kind of human in the loop? So yeah, just maybe your thoughts, just like a quick snapshot as we then head to Kate, especially Edmund, as you've just achieved your PhD. So, I imagine just being able to spit out papers compared to what you did. And I know you've worked so hard. So maybe just like a couple sentences each before we hand it to Kate.
All right. It's so funny how I actually did my PhD by publication.
Oh, good. Okay, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so walk us through that. How was yours different?
I did my PhD I started first of all by doing a manuscript. I got the first draft, and my supervisors were like, okay, let's change that into a book project and begin a PhD by publication. And for me, it was actually a very good experience. Actually, I didn't use LLMs because I was so scared of using LLMs to even bounce off ideas um, until the first time I used LLMs for my PhD was when I had already published the articles, but the introduction and the conclusion, my examiner from Germany said I must use an LLM to edit my work. And it was very shocking, but I had to then pay a human editor because I wanted to ensure that there were just some intricate parts that I didn't want to lose in the process. But this is actually a very problematic thing in a sense that if PhD becomes by publication, especially with the growing use of generative AI, what if people just generate ideas? And again, on the other side, with journal publishing houses that are so interested in the financial benefit of it, I think there is kind of tension that needs to be discussed, actually.
Right. Thank you, Mark. I hope you don't mind. In the interest of time, can I
Yeah,
pass
totally.
it? Is that okay? Yeah,
Yeah, good. Yeah, all good.
Okay. All right, Kate, over to you.
Mark and Dr. Edmund took us on an exploration of educational AI, the reality gap and implications for mental health. We started with ourselves, a social experiment with those present, an example of a student with totally AI-generated content denying the student their moment to shine. If success is just passing the test, learning is lost in the process. We've created forgetfulness, how quickly critical skills are declining, ideas plateauing, nothing groundbreaking, literacy skills lacking, copy pasting, no sense making, digital artifacts get embedded, quoted back. Conclusions scraped from papers are generic. Regurgitation is not replacement for stimulation. Design and interactivity, according to Bloom's taxonomy, this type of education makes a better person, brings a meaningful life, and kindness. This is the real definition of success. Teaching is bringing your own humanity in. It's every university's responsibility to show up honestly. AI is a tool, but academically it limits our integrity, and we have a duty of care. And mental health advocacy requires us to reflect reality that true learning is this journey, not the final destination. If you want to upskill and wow, AI will kill your potential. Knowledge is a collective endeavour. Your idea needs to withstand interaction with other humans. This messiness is the essence of success.